When it comes to EVE Online, every player wants to know the most effective tactic available. You want to know the meta. The meta controls everything. It determines what will and will not happen. Knowing the meta will alter your views, make you question your reality. It might even make you laugh. And now, you're part of it. You're watching The Meta Show.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our second podcast edition of The Meta Show. I am Brisker Ball. Today, I am not by myself. I am joined alongside our boy, the man, the myth, the legend, Mark Resurrectus. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Good morning, Brisk. I'm doing well, thank you. This really is the Meta Show ASMR edition, isn't it?
It totally is. And this is what I like about the show. It is 7:45 or so on a Sunday morning.
Yes, it is.
We will do an hour of the show. I will take the next 4 hours to edit the show, and then we'll have it ready for you guys on Monday. But this weekend was Thanksgiving. Well, I guess Thanksgiving was Thursday. Technically, that's the weekend, right?
It's the holiday weekend. Yeah.
Right. So we didn't do a live show. Mark and I are just kind of chilling. I'm wearing a sweatshirt. We're just kind of here doing our thing. And we wanted to make sure that you guys had an episode this week because there was some news and we've had a lot of fun in the last couple of weeks or so. And I wanted to make sure that we got some content out for everybody. But because people are traveling and it's a holiday and all, we figured the best thing to do this week would be to do a podcast edition. Now, I have to say, we did our first podcast edition 2 weeks ago, I think it was.
That's right.
And it was an experiment. We weren't 100% sure how successful it was going to be, but I'll tell you, everybody seemed to really like it.
Yeah, just based on the comments that I read, it seemed like it went over pretty much without a hitch. You know, people like variations on format sometimes. People like to see new things. And this is that kind of show too, that, you know, while I think it benefits a lot from having us on camera and with all the, you know, pomp and braggadocio and everything else, it is not at all diminished by, you know, pulling away some of the presentation and just giving it to you straight, you know, just giving you the business.
And I have to say, as a fan of the podcast format, because I am, this is just fun. It's just two people talking or one person talking, but this time it's two people talking. We can just have a conversation. Nobody has to worry about visuals. For those of you who are listening on the podcast on Monday mornings, sometimes we talk about things that are on the screen, and that, of course, is not fair to you guys because you can't see it. For those who are watching on YouTube, and you're mad because there aren't any visuals, well, guess what? There are going to be visuals this week. Because what I did last night, I was smart. Mark, I did something smart for a change.
Okay.
Every Saturday night in Karma Fleet, we have a standing roam. It's called Saturday Night Swarm. It has been going on for 8 years. Every Saturday night, we go out, we do something fun as a corporation. We sometimes folks that are not in the corporation tag along. We've got folks from Main Goons. We had folks from Init. We've got folks from other groups, ASCII and AMOC, and even sometimes Isabella and Big Bill the Boss, and those guys will come join us. But I decided last night I was just going to record the visuals of what we were doing in SNS and use that as the backdrop for the podcast edition. So you guys will have visuals. You'll get to see us fighting a bunch of folks in LowSec. You'll get to see us gate camping for a little while. You'll even get to see the scintillating me entosising a system in Pure Blind. It's just the most amazing thing that's ever happened.
That is compelling drama.
Right.
I was
that.
disappointed to find out that you were not, and not to jump immediately into recent events, when you were talking about the content you were planning on putting up during this podcast, the footage in the background. I was disappointed to hear that you had not joined that super fleet that dropped on our friends from Pandemic Horde, who ventured, for some reason, into Delve yesterday. That would have probably been good footage as well.
So my understanding on that fleet, so if you guys did not see that, there was essentially a birthday roam with caps from PanFam And I'm saying that on purpose. So there's a thread on Reddit.
I saw that too.
It says, Panda Fan came to Delve, and it shows the battle report of this fight. Now, obviously, this was a birthday roam or something goofy, so it wasn't a big deal. There were 113 people on the Horde side. Actually, I guess it was only 109 folks from Brave. And then there were 623 on the Imperium side. Because you come to Delve with caps, and everybody and their brother is going to come out. And we had Titans and Revenants and a Vanquisher and all kinds of stuff. And we dropped it on the Horde guys. They lost 141, almost 142 billion-esque worth of capitals, which included a Naglfar fleet, a Rev Navy, 2 Phoenix Navies, 3 Naglfars, 3 Phoenixes, 3 Thannies. I said Thannies on purpose to trigger goons, 1 Chimera, 1 Nighthogger, 1 Minocaur, a Rorqual, and then a bunch of other little stuff. And at the losses of a couple of Hicks, and that's about it. But the thread was called Panda Fam Came to Delve, and there was one really salty dude.
Yes. Semijal was his name. I'm looking at it right now.
And I'm talking to it was funny because he's going back and forth with me now because he's like, why can't you just say it was Horde? Why do you got to say Panda? It was nobody else from any of the other groups. Why can't you give us credit? This dude is desperate for Horde to get credit for whelping a birthday roam because we had the audacity to call them Panda Fam. I don't understand.
I'll tell you, it can be hard sometimes when you have that kind of association with groups that have a little more firepower than you do. I mean, I certainly find myself, oftentimes to my chagrin, associated with goons in a way that may not be favorable to other wormholers. And I've not ever once been on a fleet with goons. All I do is sit here and do this show every Saturday. So, there are benefits to it. If you benefit from it, sometimes you're going to catch some shit for it too. And in this case, if you find yourself labeled with frat, even when frat's not there, that's part of the association, baby. I don't know what else you want me to say.
All I'm saying is if you don't like us referring to your group as Panda Fam, then you could easily just,
break up,
reset fraternity, and hey, then we're not going to call you Panda Fam anymore, right? Then you would get credit for your birthday roams that you whelped, because I guess that's something that matters to these guys. Anyway, regardless, that was a fun thing that happened. Unfortunately, no, that is not the visuals that we will have for the show today because I was not there. I don't know when that happened.
This BR was posted 13 hours ago. It says the fight ended 14 hours ago. So it would have been yesterday afternoon.
Yeah, so what was I doing yesterday afternoon? I was hanging out with Mrs. Brisk, I think.
I do want to say this, and I just so we, not criticized unnecessarily for being too hard on our friends from Horde. Hell of a birthday roam. I got to be honest. Hell of a birthday roam. If you're going to do it, this is certainly the way to do it. Imagine, I agree. It was over quick, but it was, I'd say it is quite the way to do it.
I agree.
So, respect for that.
Moving on, I wanted to talk a little bit about Ushra Khan's birthday.
Oh, yeah.
Because that happened this weekend, and it's kind of a big deal. Ushra Khan, for those of you who are not aware, they are a Minmatar role-playing alliance. They are the oldest alliance in EVE Online. They just turned 19. Now, when you say 19, well, why are they 19? The game's been out for 20 years, Brisk. Well, the game did not launch with alliances as a thing. It was not a thing when they first started.
Mm-hmm.
And so it took about a year for CCP to add alliances into the game in one of the expansions, and they were the first group that came up. They were based in Providence at the time. Their big enemies were CVA. They were fighting those guys all the time, and they've been around for a long time, and they're still around. In fact, I fought them last night.
So
it was pretty amazing.
Are they
happy birthday,
actually
Khan.
The very first alliance, or are they just the oldest alliance that still exists?
I think they are. I think they were either the first alliance or the oldest one that exists. But regardless,
I mean, a hell of an accomplishment.
Yeah, it's a hell of an accomplishment. Now, there were other groups, like if you think about it, like the old school, the original OG corporations like Rikoku and Evolution and the rest of those. They were around from Alpha on. Sure. And they may have loosely affiliated with each other in like alliances. And then you had like Curse Alliances, Sane Alliances, stuff like that when they first came out. But these guys were some of the oldest in EVE. So I wanted to say happy birthday to Ushra Khan.
Yeah, I mean, that's a huge accomplishment. 19 years. My group is having our 4th birthday next month. And I think that is a huge accomplishment in the year of our Lord 2023 to still be playing EVE Online and making it 4 years. The thought of doing that another 4 times and then some, almost 5 times, is really something to think about. So,
and our group, my group, Karma Fleet, will be celebrating its 9th birthday in early January. So that's also exciting. So, hey, our groups are growing up.
Hell yeah, they absolutely are.
So for our top story today, I wanted to talk about something that happened earlier last week, which I think we highlighted and have talked about a couple times on the show, but I wanted to make sure that we draw attention to it because this is exactly what I wanted to see happen. So we're going to come back with our top story of the complete and utter dumpstering of a fraternity nightmare fleet in Zarzak because of bubbles by Init and Deepwater hooligans. Our top story. When CCP announced that they were changing the way that Zarzak was going to work to add bubbles, the CSM, of which I was then still a member, came under vicious assault by a number of people, most of whom were low-sec role-playing nerds who were very unhappy about the fact that filthy, disgusting, and dirty null-sec mechanics were being added to Zarzak, and there was going to be no counter. And crazy bad things were going to happen. And they said, Brisk, why would anyone, including someone like you? And that could take on a variety of meanings, depending on who you are. Why would somebody like you advocate on behalf of these bubble things? And I always had to explain to them, and I'd say, look, I didn't advocate on behalf of the bubbles. I said, please, can you not make Zarzak a superhighway for nullsec blocks? And let it be a thing for the faction warfare groups and the pirate faction warfare groups that were being added in the expansion. Let that be their thing so that we don't use it and turn it into something it wasn't supposed to be. And I said, hey, why don't you, when the ship caster is up, why don't you just make it one way or make it so that you can only leave via the gate that you entered or something? And CCP in their infinite wisdom decided not to do any of that. And instead they added bubbles. Many people thought, oh my goodness, this is going to be the worst thing ever. And then one of the best things ever happened. This was an amazing situation. And I think it's funny to me because this is the type of thing that I was hoping was going to happen. And then when it did, and we had video and we had a bunch of other stuff, it was just amazing. So what happened was, this was November 20th, Horde and Fraternity were moving a nightmare fleet through Zarzak. They had over 200 people in ships going through Zarzak. They were using it, as they are wont to do, as a superhighway, which was one of the big complaints and one of the big things that I was worrying about and other people were worrying about. What happens? Our boy Dark Shines, alongside the Deepwater hooligans and the snuffed out guys, they grabbed a bunch of sabers and flycatchers and they suicide ganged. Essentially, this was essentially a fleet-sized suicide gang. They were able to bubble outside of the safe area in Zarzak. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with the Zarzak mechanics, around all of the different structures in Zarzak is a safety zone that protects your ship from the atmospheric gravity effect that is elsewhere present everywhere else in Zarzak. If you are outside of that protective bubble, you take hull damage as a percentage of whatever size hull you are in. They, and by they I mean in it and Deepwater hooligans and Snuffed Out, were able to bubble outside of the protective zone, catch this nightmare fleet coming through from Horde, and just let the environment kill them. It was beautiful. It was an amazing, amazing thing, something that's only possible because of the Zarzak mechanics. And the result was Horde and Fraternity and the 7NC dot guys that tagged along, and the one poor PL, retirement home member, They died. They all died. 330 ships lost. 102.59 billion isks lost. Haunting Deity, Horde's FC, managed to lose almost this entire fleet because of the Zarzak bubble mechanics. And people went crazy, including a large number of people are like, Brisk, I can't believe this. This is the worst thing ever. How is it possible? There's no bookmarks in Zarzak. There's no way to deal with this. And I said, good.
I want to say there are a couple of moments that I have had the pleasure of experiencing in my career as both a player of this game and a personality of this game, in this community rather. And there's a famous video some time ago that came out of an old OG wormholer, this Russian guy. His name is Yadek. And Yadek was bait tanking Horde. I think it was Horde. I don't think it was PL. I think it was Horde. Bait tanking Horde with a Rorqual and a C5 red giant wormhole. Horde is there with a fleet of Sleipnirs and Hurricane navies, or Hurricane fleets rather. And at one point he warps in like 7 or 8 smart bombing nesters, and in the span of 30 seconds clears the entire fleet. You know, it was clear bait. Watching this video from the other day, and shout out to the folks, the guys from Deepwater who helped pull this off, because that I had not ever heard of this group before. They have it was a new Chinese time zone corp called Rogue Herring. Were the ones who helped orchestrate this with the guys from Init. If you watch the video,
it's just so good. It's so good.
It's so hyped. It's so good. It's so hyped. That FC, whoever it was, I'm not sure what the gentleman's name was, but it's in Chinese. Obviously, he's speaking Chinese. If you're like me and don't have the extra brain capacity to be a true polyglot, it can be difficult sometimes to watch videos, of people playing this game in Russian, people playing this game in Chinese, people playing this game in a handful of other languages that are popular within the game, and quite understand what's all going on. I don't know how you watch that video or listen to that video and don't know exactly what's going on every fucking second, because even if you don't know what he's saying exactly, the energy with which he is saying it is so clear. Like the purity of intent is so crystal. It really is a thing to behold. The moment where he starts calling for bubbles is just, there's really not anything like it. And, you're right. People did complain afterwards. I would say the majority of the discourse right afterwards was about how gangster of a move that was. But there were quite a few people who complained about how, well, this wouldn't have happened if we were able to make bookmarks in Zarzak. And I can't believe they introduced these uncounterable bubbles into Zarzak. And while I have been and will continue to be one of the people who did not necessarily intend for bubbles to be the mechanic that helps balance Zarzak, I will say that it would not have been probably too hard for the FC to send a single shuttle ahead of his fleet that would not have been dragged by the bubble to scout out that there was a fleet of sabers and flycatchers on the other gate. He probably could have done that, and it probably would not have hurt too much to do that. But he didn't. He did not do that. And we are all the better for it.
Oops.
Yeah. Oops is right, dude.
But listen, when you watch this video, it just makes me laugh, because this is the type of thing that I think we all love to see in EVE Online, because it's just you're seeing something that's never been done before. Mm-hmm. Like this was never a thing that you could get away with, because there was never another place in the game with these types of mechanics where if you're outside of a certain area, you're going to die. Mm-hmm. Like that was new. And then to have the bubbles come in, have that be an add-on after the fact that people criticized and said, well, this isn't going to stop these NULC groups from bringing their fleets in. This isn't going to stop them from doing this. So why are you doing it? And I'm laughing because this is totally going to stop now. Every single time, this was such a big deal that every single time one of these fleets goes through from now on, this event is going to be in the back of their head. And the FC on the other side is going to be like, guess what? I don't want to be Haunting Deity. I don't want to be remembered as the guy that lost a Nightmare fleet because I didn't send a scout through. And if that means that it's less likely that these groups are going to use Zarzak as a superhighway, then that's good. That's what I want to see. That's what we all want to see. We don't want this place to become a new way to move around the game and get around the geography, because there are enough ways around the geography as it is right now.
Yeah.
I don't think we need any new ones. In fact, I'd rather protect the ones that we have. As you all know, I'm a big fan of the Ansiplex. I'd rather protect those than add new things that potentially will get CCP to nerf everything. So the fact that the bubbles here worked, I think, was pretty solid and made me very pleased and very happy. And I'm glad that we were able to see here and watch this video, which I think is pretty fun. So Anyway, moving on. I'm going to go into the NULC Power Hour now because we've got a ton of stuff to talk about in terms of just other random things happening in the game.
Mm-hmm.
So here we go. NULC Power Hour. We're going to talk a little bit about the end of the war in the North and some other things that we want to talk about as well. Ding dong, the witch is dead. The witch old witch, the last Keepstar in the North witch. Mm-hmm. That is what we're talking about. So the last B2 Keepstar was finally killed a couple of days ago. That makes 4 dead Keepstars in the North for the coalition formerly referred to as B2. That is the end of their Keepstar presence in Pure Blind, Fade, and Declan. They lost 4. We killed 4 of fraternities in the beginning of the war, so I guess we're even now. At the same time, what we saw from Horde, or at least what we saw and what we were told was happening, was that there was going to be a second front opened up north since we were pulling out. If you all remember, there was a strategic update from our boy, the Gobberino himself, Pandemic Hordes Gobbins, who wrote, I hope everyone enjoyed the dank leaks and Bigley Citadel kill mails. For those who have been living under a rock, here is a summary. Our enemies, Imperium, Init, B2, Boss, Fireco, were defeated in the north and decided to retreat, abandoning 3 regions. Sick. We have been busy burning those regions to the ground, with 4 Keepstars killed so far and a 5th Keepstar kill coming up in Declan. Maybe they got 5. I don't remember. Furthermore, the enemy coalition known as B2 has been disbanded, and the enemy coalition known as Fireco, also sick, is mostly gone too. Most of them were scooped up by Imperium, some by us, some went neutral. Goals. Our goal remains the same as before. The enemy was routed. To find ways to drag goons to the battlefield and kill them. We are currently seeing 2 such flashpoints, 1 in Ketch and 2 in Cloud Ring. He refers to Cloud Ring by its official name, not by its actual name, which is Clown Ring, please. Both these regions have seen enemy resistance to our initial pushes, so we expect fights to be had. If you are new, our jump clone staging for subcax is S47. Our staging for capitals is 93 PL. Be sure to have doctrines in X47, etc. Be ready for form-ups and get some ISK and skill points buffer built up in your characters, your chars, as we will soon be announcing new doctrines. Now, Gobbin said that, and we have been seeing over the last week a significant uptick in the pinging of battle reports for objectives that they lost but had an ISK win, with Gobbins talking about how amazing Horde is because they were able to lose the objective but win the ISK war. That is what we in the professional spin business call morale herfing. That's, hey guys, I know we didn't get what we wanted. I know we screwed up and we lost the iHub and they won the objective and everything, but hey, you killed a lot of stuff. Yeah. Congrats.
It's actually really funny that we're talking about this right now. We had this exact same conversation last night. My corp got together. We were doing a cheeky bit of rage rolling late in US time zone. We got to talking about one of my past CEOs who was very ISK averse, didn't want to ever put anything on grid that could potentially go ISK negative because he was terrified of what the BR would look like. I was telling my people that is such a fascinating mindset to see play out in other people, because you can call it morale herfing if you'd like to. We have a different name for it, and that name is cope. That is saying that you are at least we were ISK positive is a thing that you say when you've lost an objective and you just need something to hang your hat on. Well, at least we were ISK positive. Like it's not said as a good thing, right? Or rarely said as a good thing in that context. So I understand that we will probably get mocked in this segment for saying this. Oh, well, they're just coping about not being ISK positive. But like, bro, it's spaceship dollars. The objective is the objective. You know what I mean?
And that's the thing. And I've said this before, and I will say it again because, hey, we've got time. One of the benefits to EVE, and one of the reasons why I like this game is it's a sandbox, and there's no right or wrong answer when it comes to how do you determine who won a fight.
Mm-hmm.
And there are lots of different ways you can look at it. You can look at, did they take the objective? Who won the ISK war? Who left the field? Who got to loot the field? Who lost the biggest stuff? All that kind of thing is how you look at a battle and a battle report and decide which side won. And the best fights are the ones where both sides can walk away saying they accomplished something. But I'll tell you, the bottom line is when you are focused on a specific objective, whether that is defending a structure, whether that is killing a structure, whether that is defending an iHub, whether that's killing an iHub, if you have an objective and the fleet is formed for that objective and you fail to accomplish the goal for which the fleet was formed, any other attempt to try to spin that you had a good time or that you won or, hey, we lost everything, but it was a lot of fun, accept it. That is just morale herfing. And there's nothing wrong with it, except it's the sign that, you realize that you screwed up.
I mean,
or that you guys didn't actually win. Right. It's exactly. It is grasping at straws. It is, all right, let me pull out my handy dandy Acme turd polisher and try to come up with a way to convince the people that were in this fleet who may be feeling bad because they were out here and they fought for a bunch of hours and the result was not in our favor, that they still accomplished something. So, hey, you killed more stuff than you lost. Great. Good job. Wonderful, guys. That's amazing. That's straight up morale herfing. But hey, if that's what it takes to get folks in fleet, then I'm all for it because God knows the last thing that I want to see in any of these fights is Horde or anybody else on the bad guy side deciding that they don't want to show up anymore because they aren't getting anything that they can take back to their people to say, hey, we did a good job.
It is a lot easier to take the moral high ground in terms of criticizing cope when you are the ones who are on the receiving end of that cope. But it goes both ways, right? It's not, everybody is, I made some comment the other day about how somebody had dropped on some of our ratters. And the day before, I had been very excitedly talking about that same person dropping on other people's ratters. And I said, wow, this sucks when it happens to me.
Of course, right?
Right. I mean,
it's the worst when it happens to me.
And so I will criticize here, make fun of people for saying and doing things that I would like to think that I would not do. But I know just as well as anybody else that when push comes to shove, we are all human, right? We're all of us have sinned and fallen short of the glory of Bob. And it is just as likely as anybody else to try and grasp at straws in the event of an unfortunate loss.
Mm-hmm. So as I noted before, in addition to the morale herfing, you had this strategic update ping from Gobbins talking about that we're currently seeing 2 flashpoints of Ketch and Cloud Ring. Well, what were the flashpoints? Well, essentially they had taken a couple of iHubs in both of these systems. And it looks like, as far as we can tell, that whatever they were doing, they've decided they're not going to do it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Fraternity had taken a number of iHubs in Ketch. They have been pushed. They have essentially started getting pushed out of Ketch. They have one system left. That iHub was reinforced. I don't know if it's still reinforced. I think it probably is not anymore, but they're going to have to go back and do it again. But they have one iHub left in Catch. In Clown Ring, Horde has a single iHub that they control. That's it. So I guess maybe they've decided to rethink their whole, we're going to push into these regions, because they realize that, well, first of all, one, at least when it comes to Clown Ring, no one cares about Clown Ring. Give it to Seventh Sanctum. No one else wants it. Have fun. Shadu, whoever else wants it, take it.
Mm-hmm.
And when it comes to the junk here in Catch, Dracaris and Tactical Farmers and the rest of the groups that live there will probably take that space back. But it's not like they're doing much. So regardless of what these guys want to herf about, that we won the North, the war in the North, where these guys are leaving, all that other kind of stuff, whatever attempts they were having to move into territory that is nominally controlled by Init or the Imperium, they've really not done that. So we'll see. Maybe this is just a lulling us into a false sense of security so that they can come in and take us out later. But I don't think that's what's happening. Two other things I wanted to talk about, and then we're going to move into a discussion of Pearl Abyss's investors call from 2 weeks ago that we have not managed to cover on the show yet, but I still want to talk about it. But the two biggest things, the first thing at least I wanted to acknowledge was congratulations to my dear friends from Karma Fleet University, who successfully won a high-sec war deck against Pirate. Now, for those of you who are unaware, because apparently there are people in EVE Online in the year of our Lord 2023 who do not know who Pirate is or who Karma Fleet University is and why a war deck between them matters, I will explain it to you. So for those of you who are completely unaware of anything going on around you, Pirate, they are one of the main high-sec war deck groups. They have been one of the main high-sec war deck groups forever. They love to pick on high-sec groups who don't usually fight back to get a bunch of random little kills and to essentially extort those groups for money and or tiers. They've been doing this for years. And by years, I mean like a decade or more. This is what they do. Karma Fleet University is the high-sec New Bro learning arm of Karma Fleet, which is itself a New Bro corporation. But we have KFU. It's designed to, unlike Karma Fleet, the whole point of KFU is to get people who are new to EVE, get them in high-sec, teach them how to play the game, teach them a little bit about mechanics up there, and then once they're finished with Karma Fleet University, once they've gotten used to the game, once they've made some friends, and they've learned how to play, then we turn them loose into the wider EVE Online sandbox, and they are allowed to do whatever they want. Some of them join Karma Fleet. Some of them go to Horde, some of them go to Brave, some of them go to other groups, some of them even might end up in a wormhole with Mark.
Yes.
But the reality is, when you have a good start in this game and you make friends and you are able to go out and learn how to play the game, you are more likely to stick with it. And that's why we have this group. Other groups, EVE University is one. I know Horde has their own, Brave's Dojo. There are a lot of different New Bro focused, super New Bro focused groups. Now there are New Bro friendly groups. Brave is New Bro friendly. Horde is New Bro friendly. Karma Fleet is New Bro friendly. We'll take folks in if they want to just jump right into NULC. We're happy to take them. But having a place to put folks who can learn what they're doing before they get to NULC has been pretty important. So what happens when the big bad war deck groups come in and try to pick a fight with the New Bros? Well, the New Bros have friends. They have Big Uncle Karma Fleet. And the result was we came in and beat the hell out of Pirate and killed their staging structure, which ends the war. That was a new mechanic added 5 years ago by CCP, thanks to years worth of lobbying by the CSM. It happened on my watch, so I will take partial credit for it, but Innominate was the one who pushed this harder than anybody and was, in my opinion, another perfect example of what happens when you get good people on the CSM There was no reason why a nullsec CSM person like Innominate would be out there advocating for fixes to the game that would benefit high-sec people that we really had no relationship with. And this is way before Karmafleet University was even a thing. But after years of lobbying and convincing CCP, hey, this is a problem, you need to take a look at this, they did, and they fixed it. And now, at the very least, these groups have an opportunity to fight back and stop the big bad war decking extortion alliances from messing with their groups. And that's what happened. Mark, do you have any familiarity with any of the high-sec war deck stuff? Have you guys ever gotten involved in that?
We have, very, very briefly. We were war decked twice this year. Both times were because wormhole groups often will move all of their structures to a holding corp or a holding alliance. We have a holding alliance for all of our stuff that we put all of our stuff in our home in and all of our farms in. And that way, all of our mains and all of our alt, there's no chance that they can be war decked because the main alliance doesn't own any structures. So, if they don't own any structures, you can't be war decked. But earlier this
Another
year,
change to the mechanics that we pushed for.
Which was great, actually. Earlier this year, when Viridian launched, the very first day, I was the first person in line to skin a Fortizar. And in order to do that, I had to move the structure into the main alliance, which made us war deckable, which we were then almost immediately afterwards. And it certainly wasn't it wasn't an extortion thing, I don't believe, because we didn't really have any high-sec presence. We weren't super active in high-sec. The most activity you were going to catch from us was trying to grab haulers, but most of our haulers are in a totally separate corp anyway. I imagine it was probably just random. Saw somebody passing through and said, hey, that's a corp that we haven't war decked yet, right? But I will say I have a markedly different opinion of groups like that now than I did when I was just starting out at EVE, or even just when I came back to start playing the game again a handful of years ago, where groups like that were terrifying, right? They were... they felt like there was something that you couldn't, there was nothing you could do. And you were just sort of at their mercy as long as they were nearby. But that opinion has changed. We rolled over the group that war decked us first, basically within 2 days, I think. These kind of groups live and die on how easy it is to just pressure people into, making mistakes. Pressure people into undocking blingy ships that they can then kill with impunity. And groups very rarely recognize how easy it is to push back against a lot of these groups, who the moment that they see anything on grid that might threaten their blinged out mercurials or their blinged out nightmares or their blinged out whatever, will almost certainly turn tail and run. So we had that experience with the group that war decked us early this year. They did not put up a fight after, the first time we showed up at their Astra to knock it down. They turned tail and ran and then never came back. So I hear people complain sometimes to me as a CSM about groups like these and about how these mechanics are so harsh on high-sec groups and people who just the little guys who just want to live by themselves and just want to be left alone. And the fact of the matter is, these mechanics, I think, are healthy for the game. It is healthy for the game for groups to be able to extort other groups. And it is equally healthy for those other groups to call on their big friends to come in and give those groups a good smack about. So
I like it.
Congrats, Karmafleet University. I bet that felt really good.
I know it felt really good for those guys because, nobody likes to get picked on, especially by these groups. And one of these things, it's funny. It's like, you would think that they would see that these guys are affiliated with one of the largest corporations in the game. All we got to do is get 15 people to come down and mess with them, and that's the end of the fight. So hopefully in the future they will realize, hey, you know what? This is not easy pickings, and they'll stay away.
That's right.
Next up, I wanted to talk a little bit about the Southeast Agreement. Are you familiar with the Southeast Agreement, Mark?
I am. Yeah. I was a big supporter of it when it first came out. I talked to Shines about it a little bit when he first announced it. I don't know if you remember this. A Southeast Agreement was the reason I was able to become, for a short time, the Renter King of Wicked Creek for a period of, I don't know, called a month and a half or so. Now
Which was exciting.
I'm just now to be fair, I'm now just the deposed Renter King of Wicked Creek, someday to return to my throne, but all of that was only possible thanks to the Southeast Agreement. So go ahead, please.
Mark knows about the Southeast Agreement. Maybe you don't. So if you are not aware, let me explain. About 9 months ago, I guess this was last February, Darkshines announced, following the expulsion of Fire Coalition from regions in the Southeast, that all of the largest NULC alliances were going to come together and say, we're not going to take the space in these regions. We're going to leave it open and let it be a thing for all of the unaffiliated groups, all of the neutral groups to come in and take the space and have fun down there. The whole idea being that we did not want to see an EVE Online where every ounce of space in NULC was owned either by Imperium, Init, Horde, Horde's renter groups, Fraternity's renter groups, or NC.'s renter groups. Any of the two big coalitions, PandaFam or Imperium, and the other large non-aligned guys, but there aren't that many non-aligned guys. Because, I mean, even within it not being in the Imperium anymore, they are still viewed as being Imperium adjacent, if you will. Mm-hmm. The whole point of the agreement was to let smaller and medium-sized NULC alliances thrive by giving them space that we would not try to take over, we being the big null blocks. This was an agreement. It was signed by Darkshines from Init, Asher from the Imperium, Noraus from Winterco, Headliner from PL, Vince Draken from NC. Riot Rick from Slice, and Gobbins from Horde. Now, I've talked to Asher, I've talked to Shines, and it sounds to me when a year is up, which will be February, this coming February, that the chances are that this agreement is not going to be reinstated. And the main reason for this, as far as I can tell, is that at least according to Asher, and I think from everything that I've seen, this has been the case. Horde has started breaking it from like the first day. They were installing friendly alliances. Now, they've not broken the letter of the agreement. These alliances are not officially part of PandaFam, but they are certainly PandaFam adjacent and friendly with PandaFam. But they put them all throughout the Southeast region, and there's been a lot of fighting going on down there between those groups. But if I had to look at the map and I said, all right, who is these groups kind of hang with? They're all kind of hanging and getting support tacitly or under the table from the folks in PanFam. We, on the other hand, Imperium, on the other hand, we have stayed completely hands off. These guys could do whatever they want. And I have to say, I have appreciated there have been a lot of fights. There have been a large number of fights down there. I wanted to highlight at least one because my friend Novus sent me an email and said, hey, Brisk, if you need stuff for the meta show, you should check this out. So I did. He put a long post about what's going on in Mencia, which is one of the regions in the Southeastern Agreement. And I want to read this to you because this is the type of thing that I think the Southeast Agreement was designed to do. And one of the reasons why I'm going to be sad when it goes, even though I recognize that Shines is unhappy with the way that this is played out, and that Asher definitely is not happy with the way that this played out. Mm-hmm. But Novus writes, he says, Mencia started off a bit rough in the beginning. We the Foundation, which is the group that he's affiliated with, literally triggered Zerg, Skanskatan, and the Red Legion all initially moved into Mencia shortly after Fire left to go north. Things started off more or less as expected, each group fighting each other in random encounters, but no one really pushing structures or Sov. As time passed, Zerg and Scan and Eltrig began fighting one another for space. Red and We the Foundation remained neutral to both parties for most of that fight, but responded for Eltrig on defensive timers when they asked for help. As that fight came to a head, Eltrig came out the winner and pushed Zerg and Scan out of the space. Following that fight, Siege Green and No Value moved into the space that opened up and began working on strengthening diplomatic ties in the region. For a short time, Eltrig and Red Legion at this point had moved back to spooky wormhole space, and Nocturne, who was part of Red, decided to stay and join Eltrig. We the Foundation, No Value, and Siege Green began working cooperatively. Around this time, Death to All Snowflakes, which, Mark, as you are well aware, is the corporation that your dear friend and current CSM colleague, Amelia, is in.
Yeah, that is the Gorin adjacents, I think.
There you go. Began deploying to Deterid, just outside of No Value space, looking for content. As No Value began getting hit, the groups listed above came to their aid, but they were getting seriously outplayed by Snowflakes et al. They're a good group and know how to theory craft in ways most null players haven't seen before. In fleet comps, props to Amelia Dustbase and their theory crafters. As fights began going less than desirable for the Imencia groups, Eltrig leadership suddenly started doing some odd things. We've been friends with them since the beginning, so this caught us, we the Foundation, by surprise. There was a channel set up for Eltrig, Siege Green, No Value FCs to coordinate and discuss tactics. We the Foundation asked to be included in that, at which point Eltrig decided to begin insulting them and their leadership, and FCs saying they had nothing to contribute, for they were shit. They were just being general dicks to the group that had stood with them in some capacity since the beginning. After insulting We the Foundation, their leader stood up for the group, same as the FCs that were privy to the conversation. Eltrig leadership took offense and decided to remove standings with them and began fighting. During this, We the Foundation still kept standings with Siege Green and No Value and responded to help No Value when they were called upon. As time went on, Eltrig started hitting We the Foundation structures.
Mm-hmm.
They were able to push their fleets off on a consistent basis. As they realized that We the Foundation was able to stand up for themselves, Eltrig began sending groups out when both they and We the Foundation were forming up to assist No Value. That's not okay. That's not kosher, but that was what was happening.
Mm.
They knew when to strike since both groups were receiving the same pings for the mutual ally and began to call in groups to help them. And from the sounds of local chat, they spun it in a way to make it seem like We the Foundation people were the bad guys. So they responded by bashing structures in Eltrig space while defending their own structures, and after a bit, they knocked over their first structure in a tussle between former allies, and that caught Eltrig off guard. And all the while, Amelia and the Snowflakes were taking advantage of the chaos. There was a post on Reddit that was attacking Amelia for basically trying to extort these guys in their space. Like, give me 250 billion, we'll leave you alone. And people were like, how could a CSM member do that? And those of us who are on the CM were like, yeah, you go for it. You're actually playing the game. Holy shit.
Yeah.
Yay, there's a CSM member playing the game. So after that post, Snowflakes realized what was going on between the two groups and used that to their advantage to remind Eltrig why you don't shit talk in a game like this and why it's important to maintain relationships. Eltrig realizes that they screwed up and they evac. And shortly after that, No Value began to evac, and now the space is empty again.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, this is, to a certain extent, like, this is what I wanted to see from the Southeastern Agreement. You have small, medium-sized groups taking the space. You have them creating content. You have drama. I like drama. Drama is good. It's fun. And that's what I'm going to miss when the Southeast Agreement goes away, because my worry is that it's just going to turn into more rental space, which sucks.
Yeah.
But I think the whole point of having an area that was off limits to the big groups that we all agreed we're not going to touch and we'll let these smaller groups get involved in, that would have been great. It's too bad Horde can't let good things happen without trying to get their greasy thumbs on everything.
I'll tell you, the value of the Southeast Agreement really has been in this kind of drama. I am well known for being a dramatic bitch, and I love to see shit like this, man. It's warfare between the blocks is occasionally explosive, but often predictable. At least in, my very brief experience, oftentimes kind of boring. I expect that the grind in the Northwest has been kind of indicative of that, but you cannot say that the engagements between these groups and the groups that preceded them in the Southeast have been boring. It's a whole can of worms down there. And if we lose that over the span of the next couple of months, that will be pretty disappointing, I think.
I agree. All right, last thing we're going to talk about for the show this week is we're going to go and we haven't done this in a while, we're doing a Piercing the Corporate Veil segment to talk about Pearl Abyss's latest earnings call, because I think it's kind of interesting what is going on over there. And it talks a little bit about what's going on with Eve, which honestly, I was kind of surprised to hear. So we're going to pierce the corporate veil to talk about Pearl Abyss's earnings call.
Oh, yeah.
The Piercing the Corporate Veil is an interesting segment. We don't do it that often anymore because we haven't had a lot of CCP-only news. But every time Pearl Abyss does their earnings call, this is usually news, but it tends to be the kind of thing where, at least on this show, we're focused more on what's going on in the game, less about what's going on outside the game, although we talk about some of the outside the game stuff every once in a while. This was November the 9th, almost 3 weeks ago. Every quarter, Pearl Abyss does an earnings call for their investors because they are a publicly traded company. And they announced that they had actually posted significant revenue increases for third quarter, which was great. The big news was, according to Noisy Gamer, who is my bro, he has been on all of these calls, has followed all of this stuff quite a bit. So he tends to be the guy that I look to when I'm not actually on the call. And I usually do these calls. I did not do this call, so I am going off of what Noisy is saying, and I trust him implicitly. So I think a lot of what he's saying here is accurate, but it's also just math and numbers, so it's not like he's providing any conclusions. But I do want to highlight that the first 3 quarters of 2023, things were not looking great for Pearl Abyss. Black Desert had been down. That's their main IP. They had been stalled. They've been trying to launch Crimson Desert, which is supposed to be the sequel to Black Desert. That thing has been mired in delay after delay after delay. But they did get an expansion to BDO out earlier, which essentially drove a 21.1% quarter-over-quarter increase from second quarter to third quarter, which brought the company back into profitability. They had lost. I mean, they had posted a net profit, but they had been down pretty considerably over the first 3 quarters of the year. Mm-hmm. Now, what does that matter to Eve? Nothing. But the Eve number is important because from second quarter to third quarter, Eve's IP revenue fell 20.8%. In the second quarter, they had made 20.2 billion won. And that dropped to 16 billion in third quarter, which is about $11.8 million. That's a pretty significant drop. It's a 4 billion won drop. That's a couple $1,000,000. It was the worst quarter in a year. Year over year, Eve revenue has fallen 17.5%. Now, what was the explanation for this? Well, I don't know if you're going to buy this, Mark, but this is what they said. They said that this was due to the decline of the, quote, base effect of the Viridian expansion. Everybody came back for Viridian, and now Viridian's kind of old and busted, and people stopped playing in second quarter. I don't know how realistic that is, but the numbers don't lie. This was the worst quarter that they've had in quite a while.
I don't know about that, man. Like, I can only speak anecdotally, but it really feels like the numbers have been better, right? Like it feels like, at least in my space, it may not be the case everywhere, but we have certainly felt like things have been good over the last couple of months. So hearing that, and especially in the run up now to Havoc, I know we won't see those until the next quarter, but that is surprising to me.
Well, I think the one thing that this demonstrates is, regardless of what we think as players, there does not seem to be any correlation between the profitability of the Eve IP and the peak concurrent user count that we all use as the shorthand for how well the game is doing.
Is that not what makes the game valuable, when there are people playing it and paying for subs? And I guess not. I mean, I don't know. Maybe not.
I don't know. I mean, it seems to me there's obviously something going on where even when we see more people playing and the numbers ticking up, that doesn't always translate into profitability for the IP. But then again, you have to remember, when we talk about the Eve IP, we're not just talking about Eve Online. We're talking about Serenity. We're talking about Eve Echoes, anything else that they're working on. And the other good thing that came out of the call was they did mention that the Eve IP is expanding. We've got this new mobile game, Eve Galaxy Conquest, that'll soft launch in fourth quarter, sometime the next couple months. We saw that at FanFest. And then, obviously, you know, what everybody's looking forward to is the Eve Vanguard FPS, the new Dust, that'll apparently be doing an open beta test in December, according to the PA folks. So there is good news on the horizon. I expect, if anything, I think probably fourth quarter of 23, which we are in right now, will be one of the best quarters that we traditionally have had in a long time. I would not be surprised if we didn't see a big spike in the amount of money coming into the game, just because, as you noted, Mark, we've had a ton of people coming back to play. The user counts have been well above what they've been over the last couple of years, well above the average. And if you're out hanging out, as you can see, when we were out last night running around Faction Warfare Space, there are a ton of people out fighting. It was enough to warm the cockles of any bitter vet's heart to see so many people out here playing the game. So I'm looking forward to seeing what the number is next month, or I guess next quarter. We'll see if it's any good. I think it will be, just based on the outpouring of support from the player base for this expansion. Havoc has been, I think, probably one of the better expansions that they have done in a while. I'm surprised to say this because I'll be honest, having seen what they were planning on rolling out,
I didn't expect there would be that much to even talk about.
Right. I was not impressed. I didn't think, all right, this is going to be great. And I thought people are going to be like, that's it? But guess what? Yeah. It is. It wasn't. And it was more than enough. And people are very happy with it. So I think when it comes down to it, I'm not always the best judge, because when you have these expansions, especially one like this, that is not geared towards NULC, but still can get NULC players excited, I sometimes that's a blind spot for me, and I freely admit it. But yeah, I'm pleased that I was wrong, and I'm pleased that this was a very well-received expansion and that it's bringing a ton of people back to the game, which is what we like to see. Mm-hmm. All right, Mark, it's about that time. We have managed to do an hour and 5 minutes worth of chatting with each other.
I know. It's incredible.
For a Sunday morning.
We didn't even have to dress up. It's right. It's a dream.
This is how we do it. So again, as I noted last week when we were talking about this, and I noted previously when we were on the last podcast show, Mark and I have been experimenting with different types of formats for the show, changing things like the time and how long they are and how we do them. So if you are enjoying the podcast show, please let us know in the comments. Let us know via email or wherever else you get in touch with Mark and I. We are pretty easy guys to find. If you don't like it, tell us as well and what you'd rather see, and we'll see what we can do. But in the meantime, everybody, thank you all for watching and listening to the Meta Show Podcast Edition. This is the Meta Show for November the 26th, 2023. I'm Bruce Grabal alongside Mark Resurrectus. We'll see you next week, and you stay classy, New Eden.